Chapter 8, The Journey Back, Introduction. The mid-20th century Viennese conductor Joseph Kripps made an astute observation about Mozart and Beethoven when he said that the latter's music reaches heaven, while the former's comes from heaven. There are exceptions, of course, but for the most part, Mozart's work is a wonderful expression of the peace and innocence of heaven, an ongoing song of love and joy. With Beethoven, as I mentioned in the prelude to this series, one finds many expressions of the struggle between light and darkness, with light ultimately victorious. In this context, it is interesting to note the distinction between how these great composers typically ended their compositions. Mozart's songs of love simply stop when they are over. Beethoven's, on the other hand, characteristically end many times, as in the last movement of the Fifth Symphony, where you can feel his savoring every exhilarating moment of the triumphant music, which appears to conclude, yet continues on as if he did not want the joy to end. I mention this by way of introducing the first part of what we will be discussing in Chapter 8. From near the end of Section 2 through Sections 3 and 4, Jesus sings an ecstatic song of what seems happily to go on and on. It is the only place in the text where this occurs, a song that glorifies the oneness of heaven, the Godhead, creation, and the sonship. The section entitled The Undivided Will of the Sonship could well be used for the title of this ongoing hymn of joy and gladness. There is another part to this glorious song that we will consider near the end of the chapter, where Jesus sings of his oneness with us and ours with him. It is unusual again to find in the text such an outpouring that describes the glorious state of unity, our true reality. The theme of oneness also serves as a leitmotif, which the reader may recall is the German word meaning leading motive. This is what Wagner's technique whereby he assigns certain musical themes in his music dramas to depict events, characters, emotions, and even objects, which he would then repeat throughout the work. This served to remind his listeners of what he wanted them to remember. Thus, whenever listeners would hear a motif, they would consciously or unconsciously think back to other hearings of the theme. This allowed Wagner to employ differing psychological levels of thought and emotion in his compositions. At times he used these motifs to introduce sarcasm or irony, where a character would sing one thing, but the music would reveal the underlying truth of the situation. It was a brilliant musical and dramatic technique which Jesus also applies in A Course in Miracles, by repeating his themes in many different ways to achieve the desired pedagogical effect of our learning his curriculum, intellectually and emotionally. In considering this hymn to the oneness of our reality, we can conceive of it as Jesus' way of imprinting on us the significance of remembering our identity. As we go through our days and are tempted to express anything other than oneness, separation from ourself, or more to the point from someone else, we would learn to hear an undercurrent of this theme, which goes hand in hand with the theme of accepting the atonement that says the separation never occurred. We therefore bring the darkness of the ego's separation to the light of Jesus' oneness, both of which are in the mind, awaiting our decision. As we go through the sections highlighting this oneness, it would be helpful to keep in mind that their purpose is not only to present to us the reality of who we are as God's undivided Son, but also to help us to hold this theme in awareness whenever we are tempted to forget, resist, or actively fight against it.